Hey, what up YouTube, welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. In today's video, on an unusual time on a Sunday morning, because playoffs are at random times really throughout this year, with two League One ones have already gone ahead and one of them is going to be starting in about an hour's time. I have decided this would be the optimum time. It would have been yesterday, but I wasn't here yesterday. So instead, I'm doing it at this time. I'm on quite a time constraint of about half an hour, just over. But so to get through all these. So on the championship front, Huddersfield Town versus Luton Town is the first fixture. The first leg will be 1-0 to Luton Town, as they have the home advantage, and someone like Tom Lockyer or someone like that will score from a 55th minute header, and it will be a bit of a boring game. The second leg, though, will be much more exciting with a 3-1 win to Huddersfield, as I believe they do have a better squad. Huddersfield will score a penalty and then some defender and a youngster, and the solitary goal by Luton will be by Lockyer again, despite him only scoring once all season. Something like that. I do think Huddersfield, though, will go through. Nottingham Forest versus Sheffield United. The first leg will end up with Nottingham Forest winning 1-0 with a goal from a player that lacks experience, maybe someone like Panzo or something, a bit of a youthful player who's hardly really played. And he makes his name on the big stage. Sheffield United will then try and push for winning the second leg, and they will score a goal in the 71st minute with Ollie McBurney. But it'll be too late, as in the 39th minute, a goal from Jack Colback will take them to the finals. This is just what I think. Personally, this is obviously not necessarily definitely going to happen. Huddersfield Town versus Nottingham Forest will therefore be the final. The match which I think most people in the Championship want. I don't want it because it means that Nottingham Forest are a step closer to being promoted. But Huddersfield's experience in the playoffs really will pay off. I can't remember the last time Forest were in the playoffs, but it was quite a long time ago. And they'll score an early penalty, Huddersfield, and a 20-minute goal from Rolando Aarons. At this point, the tie will be over, and the rest will be Huddersfield sitting in and soaking up the pressure. League One, Milton Keynes Dons versus Wycombe Wanderers. The second tie will be much more high scoring, maybe a high scoring draw, something like a 3-3 draw. The first goal will go to Wycombe with Sam Vokes scoring, and then two quick goals in succession will go to Milton Keynes Dons with goals from Kasumu and Darling. Then around the 50-minute mark, two goals will be scored, one for Stewart, like in the first leg, and Twine for MK Dons, with the final goal being scored by Wheeler, which will mean that Wycombe Wanderers do go through to the final. Sheffield Wednesday versus Sunderland. To me, both teams very equal in standard, not much really separating them. They were both in the top flight for a very long time period. And the only thing which really separates them is that Sheffield Wednesday have more recently played at a higher standard, being last season. So I think they'll win 2-1, as they've also got the home advantage, with two goals coming from Byers and Gregory. The tie will swing in the momentum, and Sunderland will score with Nathan Broadhead. So the tie will go to penalties because it will remain goalless in extra time, and Sunderland score all of their penalties and Wednesday miss all of theirs, and so there'll be parties in the northeast that night. So the final I've set up would be Wycombe Wanderers versus Sunderland. This game will be incredibly close, with both teams being in the Championship fairly recently. Obviously Wycombe last season, Sunderland in 2016-17 I think it was. I think Sunderland has slightly more experience, so I'll edge them to win 2-1, with both goals from Ross Stewart. But Wycombe will score first, but that will be from a Sunderland own goal, to be honest. I don't imagine Wycombe getting promoted again, although they could pull off a shock, to be honest. League 2, Northampton Town versus Mansfield Town. The playoff all comes down to experience, really, and Northampton have had more of it. They will win the first leg 2-1, with then Northampton thinking it'd be a bit more of an easy ride after such a comfortable first time. Because I imagine the goal by Mansfield being a bit more sort of, I don't know, it will be from some fluky goal. And so they'll probably let Mansfield Town have a bit more of the ball in the second leg. And I think that Mansfield will score a goal, levelling the tie to 2-2 on aggregate. But a half-time rollicking by John Brady will buoy the Northampton team to score a goal in the 53rd minute and win the tie 3-2 on aggregate. Port Vale versus Swindon Town. This is hard to call. Two very good teams facing head-to-head. I think that Swindon obviously were in the Premier League at one point. Port Vale also quite high up historically. And I think the first match will see Port Vale as 2-0 victors, as I believe they have a better side. But Swindon will then have to push for the game at the second leg, but they have a home advantage. And I do believe they have the ability to win the game. And so they'll win 4-2 in normal time. What a cracker of a game it will be. And that means it'll go to extra time with the aggregate scoreline being 4-4. Then when it looks like it will go to penalties in the 119th minute, Port Vale will score and progress to the final. And people in Stoke will be absolutely ecstatic. And so the final will be Northampton Town versus Port Vale. A bit of a Midland clash, really. And as I mentioned earlier, experience is crucial. Northampton got promoted a couple of seasons back in 2019-20, so very fresh in the memory, where they won the playoffs by very convincing 4-0. But this time I think it'll be a bit much closer than before, and I think it will be 0-0 after normal time. And they will win it by a scrappy penalty, controversial penalty, I'll go with, in extra time. To settle the tie. It'll be quite a weak one. I don't know, a slight push, maybe. It'll be a bit controversial. And we'll be talking about that for years to come. The National League, Notts County versus Grimsby Town in the first quarterfinals. Two historically massive football clubs. Notts County obviously being in the first division at one point, as have Grimsby, in both very early on in their histories. And so it'll be very difficult, seeing it's only a one-legged affair, and Notts County are at home. And so Notts County will win it by 3-2, I reckon. But it'll be very close run affair, maybe even quite late, leaving it Notts County to win it. And FC Halifax Town versus Chesterfield. I think my logic with this is that Chesterfield has collapsed so much in the second half. And I think that's kind of concerning going into the playoffs. It seemed like for a while they were nailed on the winning of the National League, and now they're 7th, while Halifax Town has sort of been gradually ascending, and so the ascendancy is with Halifax. So I have to back them to a 3-2 win. Wrexham will then have to play Notts County, if the way my predictions go. So it will be the oldest stadium in the world versus the oldest professional football club in the world. So a very tasty tie. I think Notts County got to this stage last time and went out, and I think they'll do the same in a similar fashion to the Hollywood-owned club, and they'll lose 4-2 after it's finished in normal time, 2 goals apiece. Solihull Moors versus Halifax Town. I would love to see Solihull in the Football League. Like, if we drew them in the EFL Trophy, I think it'd be very interesting, and it would be such a story. I mean, considering where Solihull Moors were, a fairly recent club and not got a bit of an obscure history to most people. But for Shea, they also have quite, it's obviously a Phoenix club of a historical club which was quite big in the 3rd and 4th divisions. And I like their song when they go to Wembley, actually. It's quite a nice one. And obviously their academy of FC Halifax Town is absolutely amazing. They've had, or any other players have, Jamie Vardy, Lee Gregory, couple to name there. Both teams finished on the same points, and Solihull were only seeded to have the home leg here on goal difference. But I think Halifax have had a better season. I'm going to back them for a tight 1-0 win. So the final will be Wrexham versus FC Halifax Town. They've sort of mirrored each other, haven't they, this season? Wrexham have rose up a bit more in the second half, and Halifax at one point looked like they could finish in second, falling away a bit in the second half. Not massively compared to Chesterfield, though. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, and it could only be settled by a penalty shootout at Wembley. And I think Halifax will score 5 penalties, and Wrexham will score 4. The Shea are going to be back in the Football League. The National League North, and then the quarterfinals of York City versus Chorley. York are historically much bigger, although Chorley obviously had this amazing FA Cup run last season when they knocked out Derby and drew against Wolves, and then a quite good performance. But I think York City have been working their way up a bit. Chorley have been in the National League fairly recently, and they've been consistent a lot of the season. It's going to be so close. It's going to be 2-2 draw for quite a while. Maybe last 5 minutes, York will score and make the tie 3-2, and York City will progress. Kidderminster Harriers versus Boston United. They were both in the Football League in the noughties. I think it was 2005-06 with Boston and 2006-07 with Kidderminster. So they've obviously dropped down together. It's really quite a fall-off, to be honest, being in the National League North. And I can't separate these two teams, so I'll go with a 1-1 draw after normal time, and in extra time there'll be no goal scored, and so it's heading to a penalty shootout, where Kidderminster will score 6 and Boston will score 7, meaning that Boston will progress through to the semis. So this will be Brackley Town versus York City. Well, York reached this stage last season, or not last season, it was last time because they didn't have it last season, the season before, and they were knocked out. And this time they were sort of in the roles being reversed. They are the underdog, as before they were the expected. I think Brackley will be a little disappointed, really, that they should have won the title and they didn't. So I think it will be 2-0 to York. AFC Fylde versus Boston United. Well, Fylde have a really weird history as they come from like tier 11 or something and work their way up the pyramid with a lot of money and allegedly the most hated non-league football club, according to one video I watched, because of how much money they splashed on it. Boston, though, have historically been a better side, but I think it's now flipped. Fylde are obviously better and is on the rise. So I think they'll win this tie 5-3, with goals all around and a very exciting affair, really. AFC Fylde versus York City. A Lancashire v Yorkshire affair. Bit of a bitterness there, isn't there? And the atmosphere will be quite tasty at Fylde Stadium, despite it being relatively modern. But I've got to back York, surely, to get back to National League. Well, I think it'll be scrappy, though. I think Fylde are a good team. I think it'll be a 1-0 win to York. And this could kickstart their rise back up through the levels. And never know, you could see them in League One in a few seasons' time. National League South. Oxford City versus Eastbourne Borough. Well, Eastbourne are in a really bad run, aren't they? They've lost the last 4 games and hardly picked up that many points, really. 1 point in the last 5. And that's really going to go against them, isn't it? But is it really? The form is obviously not great, but form really goes out the window in the playoffs. It's a one-legged affair in the National League South. And so I'm backing something weird to come up now. I think Eastbourne Borough is going to get out of nowhere a 3-0 win. And I'm going to get absolutely abused for that in the comment section. But I do think it will happen. Oxford have been sort of all over the place. Eastbourne have consistently been in the playoffs this season. Dartford v Chippenham Town. I feel Chippenham have only squeezed into this after a late charge, whereas Dartford have been pretty consistent all season. But due to that crazy unbeaten run Chippenham have had, it breeds confidence into the club, doesn't it? And I'm going to be backing Chippenham to win by 2-1. It'll be quite a close-knit affair, but I do feel fairly quickly they'll be 2-0 up, and Dartford will only have a consolation goal, about 70-something minutes maybe. Dorking Wanderers versus Eastbourne Borough. Dorking on paper are a much better team, and I actually tipped them for the title at the start of the season with my predictions. But again, the shocks will continue. And maybe Dorking will just be a bit disappointed that they've not been automatically promoted. Although I think it's been coming for quite a while, about the last 5 weeks or so. I think most people have known that they're not going to be automatically promoted, and instead it was going to be Maidstone United, isn't it? I think the shock will continue. Eastbourne Borough will win by 2-1. Ebbsfleet United versus Chipping Town is the other fixture, and both teams are really good coming into this fixture. They're both pretty consistent, and they both have about the same length of unbeaten run. But because the consistency all season has been with the Fleet, I think that'll prevail, and it'll be a very exciting game, very end-to-end, and Ebbsfleet is going to win 3-2. And the final then is the Battle of the Eves, Ebbsfleet United versus Eastbourne Borough. And both teams have very good defences. And the game will be very nervous, as it often is in a playoff final. You don't normally get that many goals. So I think it'll be goalless. It will be goalless in extra time. And I think Ebbsfleet will score 3 penalties only, which you say is a little, so you think I'm going to be backing Eastbourne. But no, that'll be all that's needed, as Eastbourne won't score a single goal because they're just so low scoring. That affair. So thank you very much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you're new around here. Much appreciated. This will be the one which is the equivalent of next week. So I don't think there'll be a video next week. Probably not. There might be. Depends. But please let me know your predictions down below, actually. I'm interested to see where you're going with all these playoffs. Maybe maybe you think I'm completely wrong with that National League South one. Won't be surprised. Won't be the first time. I will be doing whether your manager should be sacked in the future, as well as the end of season prediction reaction. So goodbye for now.